my real-time experiences as a classroom teacher, so that hopefully it can help you problem solve if you're having problem behavior with students. And I know the guys in the back are education students, and so just to let you know, kind of give you a problem-solving method to follow if you have a student acting up in your class. I'm Jessica Fungi. My family calls this my alphabet soup. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a national certified counselor, and a national certified school counselor. I've been at Nichols for 2 years after being in Terrebonne Parish for 17 as a classroom teacher and as a school counselor. So what I'm sharing with you are my experiences in those roles. So let's get started. The first thing I need to tell you is there's no proven method that works on every kid. Anybody that has 2 children knows that to be true. What works for one kid will not work for another. If there were a proven method, we would cut it out, sell it, and we wouldn't have any discipline problems, and nobody would go to the office, right? The problem is problem behavior in a classroom will occur. Every kid that comes to you comes from a different background. So as faculty, what you're going to have to always remember is that what you're going to need to do is just keep going back to the drawing board. Keep trying to figure out what's happening with this child so you can solve that problem. All right? All right, so there's good news and bad news. The good news is we have accountability. Accountability is a good thing because it makes sure that students are learning. It makes sure teachers are teaching. It makes sure that when our kids graduate from high school, they have a skill set that we can count on. The bad news is discipline problems are increasing. A lot of students, more students are being identified with disabilities. And teachers are having to address all of these things and still manage problem behavior. Okay? So how do we do it? Behavior management is quite easy if we always remember that behavior serves a function. And if you remember anything from this presentation, I would ask you to do that. This is B.F. Skinner 101. Behavior serves a function. We do stuff to avoid things and to get things. All right? Remember that. That student that is acting in your classroom is acting that way because they want to get something or they want to avoid something. Look, why do we go to work? Well, now some of us say we're supposed to get a paycheck, but we're teachers, right? Why do we obey the speed limit? We obey the speed limit to avoid getting a ticket. All right? So the things that you do, why are you here today? Because they told me to come, right? We do that to avoid getting in trouble or to get knowledge to help us. So consider that when you think about what you're doing. And if you keep this in mind, when that kid's in your classroom, what is he doing? What's he getting him? Oh, what is he trying to avoid? I had a student when I was as a school counselor. Every day he came wanted to come see me during math. Every day. And the teacher was very happy to have him out of math. But when we looked at his math grades, he wasn't doing really well in math. Was he trying to avoid math? Possibly. And it was a conversation I had to have with the student that I'm going to talk to you, but not during math because you need to be there. I'll talk to you during PE while I didn't see him again. So always remember this. The funniest thing, working in the office, I had to counsel students who had been to the office. And faculty would come in after the referral and say, you know, he did that. I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to get rid of. Really? So what'd you do? I wrote him up. Sometimes we give students exactly what they're asking for. And we're reinforcing behavior. So we have to be careful with that. So if you're having a problem with the student, the first thing we need to remember is planning. All right? Sometimes if we can go back to the lesson plan, we can avoid discipline problems. For example, if you know that Joni and Timmy do not get along, you're not going to put them in a group together, right? If you know that you have students and you get those accommodations at the beginning of the semester, if you have a student who's got attention deficit disorder, you're not going to put him by the door or by the window. And you get those accommodations on the front end so that you can make those plans for your lessons. But planning ahead can help. Idle time provides students an opportunity to behave as they want. My first year teaching, I had planned a lesson one day, and I'm going to tell you a lot of stories about my first year teaching because I learned a lot. But the lesson ended up early, and it was, what, 10 minutes to the bell? All right, well, we're just going to hang out till the bell rings. That was the longest 10 minutes. Never again. And if I managed to get through what I wanted that day, they always had a backup activity, because I wasn't doing that again, because they sat there and went crazy for 10 minutes. So certainly being aware of that can help. Teaching bell to bell is important. Work that is not meaningful will not be completed. They know when you're giving them busy work. They know if you're not going to grade it. That last minute thing you pulled out that day because you weren't completely prepared, if they don't think it means something, they're not going to do it. And lessons that are not engaging will lead to boredom. We can create problems for ourselves doing it that way. I was teaching 9th grade world geography, and I had the cutest lessons planned, right? So then I transferred to the high school, and I was going to do the same thing. The high school folks were looking at me like I was crazy. We're not doing that. That's a junior high thing. And it caused problems. So I had to reframe and re-look at that lesson and figure out a better way to present the material. I also had a student, now get this, he was GT, ADD, EBD. Okay? He was smart as a whip, but he was hyper. And he had to stay engaged. He was 2 chapters ahead the rest of the class. As long as he had something to do, he was fine. But he couldn't sit there idle, so I just put him on the next chapter. All right, dude, you finished? Here's the next chapter. So it was to keep him engaged, to prevent him from acting up. So sometimes just planning ahead can circumvent a lot of those problems. Can I go on? All right. So you looked at your lesson. It's engaging. You've met all that. It's on level. You've prepared this dynamite lesson, and you're still having problems. Next thing we have to do, if you still need to go consider how to handle students, is to isolate the problem. A lot of times we come in, and teachers will come into the lounge, and it's like, oh, first period is so horrible. The whole class. Third period is terrible. I hate my 6th period class. I just hate every single one of them. You know, a lot of times if we sat and we looked at the makeup of that classroom, there's a lot of kids that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And what's frustrating us is maybe 3. Maybe there's 3 ringleaders in that class. So we have to isolate who's the problem and what's the problem so that we don't generalize everything. Students hate it when they get punished and they're doing everything they're supposed to do. They don't perceive us as fair. And I say us because I'm still in the role of faculty here at Nichols. I'm assistant professor. But if you're going to penalize everyone for something that a few people are doing, it's going to not get everybody on board. Reframe. We really have more good students than bad students. The bad students just drain us, okay? My first year teaching, again, end of the day, I was just fit to be tied. Went to my assistant principal, okay, I quit. And she said, you can't do that. I said, yes, I can't do it. I can't do this. She goes, Jessica, how many students do you teach? And at that time, we had a 6-period day. And I had about 30 students in every class. So it was like, okay, I teach 130 students. Now, she said, think about this. How many of them are eating your lunch? 5. 5 students out of, so what you're telling me is you teach 125 good students. I said, yes, I do. And she goes, why are you doing that? Why are you letting the bad students drain you? And when she did that, that was kind of like an aha moment for me, and I realized that I was spending a lot more energy on those 5 students than the other 125 that were awesome. And they really were. We teach more good students than bad students. At the beginning of the year, you know how you make your phone calls, you know, Junior's in my class and he's not doing so well. He kind of struggles sitting still and remaining quiet. I started making phone calls to parents about students who were misbehaving, and it started bringing me down. After that conversation with Miss Jones, what I decided to do, for every student I called, a parent that was misbehaving, I had to call a student that was doing well. A parent for a student that was doing well. And you wouldn't believe the parents. Oh, you calling me to say he's doing well? We never get that phone call. Are you serious? I had mamas and daddies crying on the phone because I was calling to tell them, hey, look, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because this kid is doing great. So, and it taught me something about focusing on those, allowing those poor students or those bad behavior students to drain us. All right, so we isolated the problem. The lesson is well, we isolated the problem. Now we have to determine who's got the problem, and this is the part that's kind of icky and the piece of this presentation that might not sit comfortable for some people, because it means looking at what you're doing and what we do as teachers. Because there's 2 parties to every conflict, and sometimes it's about the student, and sometimes it can be about the teacher. But let's look at the student part of it, okay? If it's the student, we sit there and we figure out, it's not me, it's not what I'm doing. Behavior starts to function. What is this behavior getting this kid? What's he doing? Why is he doing it? All right? What is he trying to get? Or what is he trying to avoid? A lot of you guys, you get behavior plans for your special ed students. So that's been identified for you. But what about the students that aren't or don't have a behavior plan, and you're still struggling with their behavior? This is how that works. Once behavior is learned, it's kind of hard to change. It's not impossible. It's just hard, okay? Consider this. You guys are in middle school. All right. If they're acting poorly in the classroom, they've been coming to school, and I would ask them that. I taught at a junior high school, and when they came in because they were suspended, I would ask them, okay, you've been coming to school for how long now? 7, 8 years? In all that 8 years, was there ever a teacher that said, you know what, you can talk whenever you want to, it's okay? And they would look at me and say, no. Well, then what makes you think that this teacher is going to expect something different? You know, sometimes they challenge us. Sometimes they have a behavior pattern that they've learned. Somebody's reinforced it. My dissertation study was on students who had repeated a grade because they academically failed. Can you imagine having that reinforcement? You know, being in the 4th grade and learning or feeling like you're an unsatisfactory, okay? Once you learn that, once we teach them that, we make them